There you are, sir. Wow. Aren't we lucky to have heard that original recording of a chap going to the barber's shop in 1521 and getting a lovely trim of his beard. Amazing that they had electric trimmers back then. Who'd have thunk it, huh? Just fascinating. Hello there, and welcome back to the final couplet with me, Theo Cowan. Here we are, we're on to Sonnet 72, and you'll be pleased to know that I did my homework on this one, so I knew all along that Sonnet 72 was actually Sonnet 71 Part 2. So there's no tricking me this time, Shakespeare, even though you try your best every week. So if you didn't listen to last week's episode, maybe go back, have a listen, find out what it was all about, and Sonnet 72 is a direct follow-on from Sonnet 71. And I've said this before in previous episodes, but when Shakespeare does a sort of follow-on sonnet that should be called 71 Part 2 and labels it as 72, I just think that's him trying to make up the numbers. He wants to do as many sonnets as possible before he dies. So he's not going to call it Part 2, is he? He's going to give it its own title. It's going to give it a new number. And for me, I think that cheapens it. There, I said it. Someone had to. Anyway, I think it's about time we have a little read of Sonnet 72 and find out what it's all about. Oh, lest the world should task you to recite what merit lived in me, that you should love after my death. Dear love, forget me quite, for you in me can nothing worthy prove. Unless you would devise some virtuous lie to do more for me than mine own desert, and hang more praise upon deceased eye than miserly truth would willingly impart. Oh, lest your true love may seem false in this, that you for love speak well of me untrue, my name be buried where my body is, and live no more to shame nor me nor you. For I am shamed by that which I bring forth, and so should you, to love things nothing worth. So, there we have it, Sonnet 72, and as expected, pretty similar to Sonnet 71. A lot of the same thoughts, expanded a little bit, and the final couplet quite bleak, really, and a bit rude, I'd say. To me, it has a tinge of, oh, don't worry about me, don't think about me when I'm dead, but really what he means is, actually do think about me, because you're writing a sonnet about it, and people are going to read that sonnet after you're dead. So how are we going to forget about you, Shakespeare, if, even 600 years later, we're still bloody reading your sonnet? We're thinking about you now, mate. So again, and I've talked about this in the past, I think there's an element of sort of faux humbleness to this, where he's saying, I'm not worth your love. Don't even remember my name when I'm dead. But obviously no one wants that, do they, really? In the back of his mind he's thinking, please remember me. Oh, please remember me. Please love me beyond death. That's my thought, and maybe that's a cynical view. It's a very English cynical view, isn't it? I'm sure there are people listening to this going, no, Theo, come on, he meant it. That's love. He's saying, forget about me, try to forget about me, move on with your life. I'm not worth remembering. And that's really sweet, and that's a real sacrifice. But no, I'm cynical, I'm sorry. I think we should dive into this line by line now and work out what the hell Shakespeare was talking about in Sonnet 72. So he starts with, oh, lest the world should task you to recite what merit lived in me that you should love after my death, dear love, forget me quite. So here he's saying, oh, of course, that translates as oh, surprisingly. In case the world asks you to tell tell it what I was good at and what was great about me and why I was worth loving, just forget me entirely after I die. All right? That's what he's saying in the first few lines. He's saying, if the world comes to ask you what I was like and why the hell you loved me, just forget I existed. And we heard that thought quite a lot in Sonnet 71. He continues with, for you in me can nothing worthy prove, unless you would devise some virtuous lie, to do more for me than mine own desert. So this is all a continuation of the same thought, really, but he's saying, don't remember me, all right? Forget about me, for you won't find anything worth saying about me unless you make up a lie about how great I was. And that lie would make me sound better than I actually was. So the only way you could tell the world and fool the world that I was a great person is by lying. So don't do that. And then he continues with, and hang more praise upon deceased eye than miserly truth would willingly impart. So again, a continuation of the same thought. He's saying that lie would give more praise to my dead self than I actually deserved when I was alive. So really, the long and short of it is, when I'm dead, forget about me and don't make up lies about how great I was, because I wasn't as good as the lies that you would be telling. They would make me sound way better than I was. I mean, in many ways, me personally, I would say, make up loads of lies about me when I'm dead. Why not? Make me sound like I did loads of amazing things and I was a genius. And actually that I came up with the cure to some horrible diseases and they didn't quite make it onto the market because of the pharmaceutical companies or something like that. That's a good one. So remember that. Tell that lie when I'm dead and I'll sound great. So I actually disagree with Shakespeare on this one. Oh, lest your true love may seem false in this, that you for love speak well of me untrue. My love be buried where my body is, and live no more to shame, nor me, nor you. So that's quite a hefty chunk to dissect, but really we had to do that because it's all one thought. And here he's saying, to prevent, of course, again, that just translates as to prevent your true love for me becoming false, which it will, by the way, if you make up lies out of love for me, let my name be buried with my dead body, and no longer bring shame to either of us. He couldn't really be clearer there, could he? But I don't really know why he's bringing shame into it. Maybe there's things that we don't know. I mean, there must be, but to think that he would have shame attached to his name. I mean, what the hell was he getting up to in his life? I mean, from the other sonnets, he was probably cheating and sleeping about with other men, and that's not great. But you know, you've got to forget these things at death potentially. But here he's saying, let his shame die with his name. You know, don't talk about him anymore. It does make you wonder, doesn't it, what he got up to make him feel so ashamed. But now, of course, we're on to the final couplet. For I am shamed by that which I bring forth, and so should you, to love things nothing worth. And this is quite a brutal final couplet, isn't it? Because here he's saying, he's bringing shame into it again. He's saying, I'm ashamed of what I've done in my life. And you should be too, to love such worthless things. And I think he's talking about himself here, to love such worthless things, such as him, such as Shakespeare. So he's saying, you should be ashamed as well, mate. All right? It's not just me to be ashamed. Obviously, I'll be dead, so I can't really feel shame. But you should feel ashamed for loving me, to be quite honest. It's embarrassing because I am not great. And what I did in my life was also not great. So I think the best thing for everyone would be to forget my name and just move on straight away, forget this ever happened. There we go. And the jury's out on this one. But as I said before, I think he's being faux humble. He actually didn't do bad things in his life, really, beyond what everyone else does. And he's saying, just forget about me. You know, you should be ashamed. Just forget about my name, please. But really what he's thinking is, please remember me forever, because I know you love me. But then, of course, the other interpretation, which you might have at home, is, no, I really want you to forget my name, because I wasn't that great in life, and it's best that you forget me and move on, and your love for me should die with me. And that's a very noble thing to say. So you could have that opinion, or you could have mine. Let me know. Right, I think it's about time we move on to our little story that we do each week. If you're joining us for the first time on Sonnet 72 for some mad reason, then what I like to do is just make up a little story surrounding the sonnet. And it is a continuous story. It's been going on for 72 sonnets. So what I'll do is a quick recap of last week, and you're just going to have to roll with it and try and get on board the story train. So Shakespeare was leaving Barbados with the writer Christopher Marlowe, and they're on this boat. Shakespeare's persuaded Christopher Marlowe to leave the island and leave his friends and come back to London with him. But what's happened is, and this is a nightmare, is while they're sailing, Shakespeare's fallen very, very ill, and he does not look well. And he really seems like he's on death's door. And Christopher Marlowe is worried about him, and Shakespeare has written Sonnet 71, just sort of explaining, look, when I die, please just forget about me. And he wrote Sonnet 71 with his last bit of energy and recited it to Christopher Marlowe, and that's where we left off. Let's see what happens next. Shakespeare finished reciting Sonnet 71 to Christopher Marlowe. He coughed, and Christopher Marlowe started to weep uncontrollably. He said, Shakespeare, I can't lose you. Please, I think I love you more than anyone I've ever loved in my life. And Shakespeare says, you must let me go. Did you not listen to my bloody sonnet? It said, forget about me when I die. And with that, I die. The room fell silent. Christopher Marlowe quietly walked over to Shakespeare, knelt down next to him, put his fingers up to his eyes, and closed his eyelids. Shakespeare said, what are you doing? And Christopher Marlowe said, oh God, sorry, I thought you were dead, because you said, with that I die, so it sort of seemed like you were going to die. And Shakespeare said, no, I'm not dead yet, please don't close my eyes. Sorry, I know I made it seem like I was dead, but actually, I think I've got a little bit of energy left in me. So, Christopher Marlowe stayed by Shakespeare's bed all through the night, and actually, as the hours went on, Shakespeare began to gain a little bit of energy. And by the morning, he had a spring in his step. He was back, baby. Christopher Marlowe couldn't believe it. He said, Shakespeare, what a turnaround. I thought you were going to die. I mean, I was in tears yesterday, and now look at you. Shakespeare did a little dance and sang a little song and said to Christopher Marlowe, actually, mate, I feel better than ever. And feeling rejuvenated, they ran out onto deck and hoisted the sails again, ready to sail to England. But just as Shakespeare was smiling and laughing and lifting one of the sails up, a rope got caught round his ankle and lifted him high into the air, swinging him over the sea. He was shouting, oh no, oh God, help me, help me, Christopher. And Christopher Marlowe saw what had happened and ran over to Shakespeare and said, oh God, no, Shakespeare, you're over the water. And As if their luck couldn't get any worse, a shark fin was seen in the water. It was circling beneath Shakespeare, and the rope which was holding the weight of Shakespeare's body above the circling shark was beginning to fray. Shakespeare said, "Christopher, it seems like the world does not want me to live." And Chris said, "Shakespeare, don't give up yet. We can get you out of this bind." "It's no use, Chrissy." Can I call you Chrissy? Yeah, that's fine. You can call me Chrissy. "It's no use, Chrissy. This rope will snap, and I'm going to be eaten by sharks." "Oh, I am the unluckiest man in the world." Christopher Marlowe was running around the deck trying to find something to haul Shakespeare in. Meanwhile, Shakespeare pulled out Sonnet 72 from his back pocket and shouted out to Christopher Marlowe, "Chris, before I die, I've written a sort of second part to the sonnet that I wrote yesterday when I thought I was dying." And Chris said, "Shakespeare, there's no time for this. The rope that's holding you up is fraying and you're about to die." And Shakespeare shouted back, "Look, if I don't read Sonnet 72, it won't be worth living anyway." And Chris said, "How many sonnets do you have in preparation for your death?" "I have a lot, actually. So be ready for them. Whenever I might die, I usually have one that's ready to go. So just shut up and listen. This is important, Chris." And with that, Shakespeare, whilst hanging upside down from a fraying rope above a circling shark, began to read Sonnet 72. "Oh, if the world asks you to tell it what was so good about me to justify your loving me, forget about me, my love, 'cause you won't find anything worth saying about me unless you concoct some generous lie which makes me sound better than I am, and give more praise to my dead self than I ever had when I was alive. Oh, to prevent your true love from becoming false, which it will be, by the way, if you make up lies out of love for me. Let my name be buried with my dead body, and no longer bring shame to either of us. I am ashamed of what I have done in my life, and you should be too, to love such worthless things." Wow, so there we have it. Shakespeare almost died, and then is almost dying again in a very short space of time. He really is quite unlucky, isn't he, on this boat trip back? So the question is, will he make it to London, or will he get eaten by sharks? Now, I know what you're thinking. There's another 80 sonnets to get through. So if he dies now, then you'll have to end the podcast. And maybe I will. So don't think that just because there's more sonnets there that Shakespeare's going to live, because he might not. So I hope you're waiting with bated breath for next week's episode. Until then,